For your session, we'll need to give some time for them to take a break because we already have a break right now.
Good.
And yeah, actually we will have like 60 until 70 minutes for your presentation,
Mhm.
and then we have a question and answer session for around 30
Right.
minutes. Yeah,
Right.
right.
Right. Understood. Understood. Good. All right. I'm looking forward to it, and I wait then for you to give me the green light to
Okay.
get started. Okay. Good.
Actually, I met you on the April, I think, for the
Yeah.
accreditation.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that was the starting point for me that I came into contact with Mr. Bayu, so that he then asked me later whether I could participate in such a summer course. I
Yeah,
further understood that these are people, students from different backgrounds, right? So they're not
yeah,
particular in agriculture, or so it will be pretty generic, pretty basic what I can try
yeah,
to bring across today. Yeah.
yeah, that's good.
But I've seen the program. It's fantastic, unbelievable. Wow, I'm really deeply impressed.
This is actually our sixth year our for holding this summer course. Yeah,
All right,
it's been six
interesting,
years.
unbelievable. Well, quite a bit. All right. I'm ready to start whenever. So you give me the green light, and then I jump in.
Sorry, could you repeat?
I'm I'm ready. So whenever I should start, you just give me this signal, and then I move on.
Okay, okay, Professor Markus. Yeah, take your time. Maybe we will start around 50-30 or 50-20. Yeah,
Yeah,
give
I'm fine.
I will give a message for you in the chat box.
Sure, sure. Excellent. All right. I wait and see. See you in a minute.
Yeah, see you.
Welcome back, everyone, and we will continue our last course in this day. And the next session from the Prof. Dr. Renat Markus Frank, and he is already attending the session online by Zoom. The lecture is about agro-industrial sustainability and digital transformation, and this session will be led by Talia Nazia MIC MBA as the moderator, a lecturer from Department of Agro-Industrial Technology Universitas Gadjah Mada. Let me read the moderator CV for you. Ms. Talia Nazia MSc MBA pursue her bachelor degree majoring in food and agricultural product technology in Universitas Gadjah Mada, and then she pursue her master degree majoring in industrial engineering in Universitas Gadjah Mada and in National Taiwan University of Science and Technology majoring in industrial management. One of her publications is identification of characteristic needs and interests of tempe producer. And one of her research interests is about the development of Omah Jadah Kaliurang. She also has activities in community development like identification of regional potential for online marketing implementation in Tempe Chip Marketing Business Actor, the Renan Village, Pedan District, Klaten Regency. Without further ado, Talia Nazia MSc MBA, the time is yours.
Yay, thank you, Miss Arunina, for introducing me. Good morning, Professor Markus, and also good afternoon, everyone, and maybe good evening for all the participants who might have different time zone. As mentioned before, my name is Talia Nazia, and I am a lecturer of Agroindustrial Technology, Universitas Gadjah Mada. And for this session, we will have Professor Dr. Markus Frank as our speaker. Okay. Good morning, Professor. How are
Good
you?
morning.
Okay. And before we listen to Professor Markus' lecture, please let me introduce him first. So, Professor Dr. Markus Frank is the Professor Chair for Corp Health Management, Faculty of Agriculture, Nürtingen-Geislingen University, Germany. And he was study at Universities of Kiel and Tübingen, Germany, diploma in biology, and this equivalent to Master of Science with overall grade Sergat, which is equivalent to first class. And also for the doctoral degree is from Department of General Genetics, University of Tübingen with grade magna cum laude, which is also equivalent to first class. And then for the postgraduate researcher at University Pierre at Marie Curie, Paris, France. And last but not least, he earned his Master of Business Administrations with merits from Surrey Business School, Guildford, UK program. And today he will give a lecture about sustainable agriculture, light at the end of the tunnel. But firstly, I would like to inform you that this session will be end on 5 p.m. GMT plus 7, or it will be on 12 p.m. in Nürtingen, Germany. So we will give 60 until 70 minutes for Professor Markus Frank to explain the materials, and then around 30 minutes for the question and answer session for all the participants. I would like to inform also that we have two kind of participants here, which are on-site participants and also online participants. So for the online participants, I would like to ask you to turn on your camera so Professor Markus could see all the audience. Okay, and without any further ado, please welcome our speaker, Professor Markus Friend. And now, time and screen is yours.
Thanks very much, Ms. Nadia. I just have one quick question with respect to the operating agreements. Can we do a sort of interaction? Because I have some stuff prepared, but I'm very flexible. For me, it's very important that you, as a students or people taking part in the summer course, take the best out of it. Therefore, of course, the feedback would be helpful. So if there are questions, if there is any sort of feedback, I would love you to sort of pass this forward to me such that I can react to that. Yeah.
Okay.
If it just goes in one direction, then people might fall asleep, and that would be sad at some
Okay,
stage.
sure.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I have also prepared like a little online game I would like to do with you. So maybe one or two students who could volunteer would be highly appreciated. All right.
All right, sure.
Okay.
So we have interaction for this for Professor Markus Frank session. So for all the participants, please
Please.
active.
Yeah. Please. And please, I'm not so familiar with Zoom, so I know there's a chat functionality, but I might not see it always. So it would be just easier if you raise your voice somehow that I can then react. Yeah. All right.
All right.
So I would try to share my screen, and I hope that it works. So are you able to see my screen now?
Yeah. We can
All
see
right.
yours.
Wonderful. So when you asked me to participate in this session, I thought, what can I share with you? As I'm based in Germany at the moment, actually the closest city or capital I'm located at is not Berlin, so the German capital, but it's Copenhagen, the Danish capital, because I'm very close to the border, and countries in Europe are very small. You know that we are organized in a European Union pretty much, so that also agricultural policies pretty much are driven by European Union, by Brussels. So the individual countries have very limited say on the question how agricultural policies go. So what I would love to do with you in the next 60 minutes or so is to share some of our views, some of the experience that I gained doing research over the last 20 years on agricultural sustainability. However, the background or the focus, the perspective is very European driven. Is driven by the way how we believe, how I believe, also pretty much European, Western European consumers tick, how big industries, multinational companies tick, which often do business, of course, in Indonesia as well. And it's a very personal and subjective view. And I would love to start with this picture, which you can see here. And you see two banners. One banner, I hope you can see also my mouse. Can you see my mouse when I move it? Yeah, great. So on the right-hand side of the banner, you see a slogan that you easily understand: "No farmer, no food," which for you in an Indonesian background might be kind of clear, but I have to say it's not clear for a lot of Western European people anymore, as our economies are driven by industry. In Germany, for example, it's mechanical engineering, it's automotive, and those kind of things, right? In UK, it's financial services. Agriculture does not play a very important role. The impact of agriculture on the German gross domestic product is less than 1%. So it's marginal. And sometimes when I tend to talk about agriculture sustainability, I start to explain agriculture in general. And that's not always easy to a Western European person. As I said, it's a marginal topic. So it's always good what my cousin, who runs our family farm, which you can see in the background, I wanted to remind consumers, if there are no farmers, there's no food. And what you cannot translate here, that's German. The banner on the left-hand side, it pretty much says, one farmer feeds 145 people. And that's maybe not the actual number. It might have grown up to 147 or so. I don't know. It's a couple of years old. Why do we need to talk about that? It's so obvious. As for 15,000 years ago, we all have been farmers. We have to talk about this because people have forgotten about it, how important agriculture is, especially in Western Europe, where you have the shelves of supermarket filled with everything. And even in times of a pandemic, you get nice, freshly produced fruits from all over the world, exotic countries like Indonesia, no problem. Supply chains, food supply chains, globalized food supply chains always worked, always. Unbelievable. And they are unbelievably efficient. So, well, it's sometimes good to talk about that as the biggest threat to agricultural sustainability from my personal view and my personal experience, which I would love to share with you today, is that agriculture is so damn important, but nobody wants to do it. Very simple. I worked, so what I'm going to share with you today is, let's say, results from my previous research, my previous history in the university. Before that, I worked for the chemical company BASF for 15 years in a multinational company, in global, let's say, global agrochemical development. So I can bring in experience from different parts of the world. And there seems to be one common motive. I don't know whether it's true for Indonesia as well, but it holds true for a lot of other countries, Western European countries, South American countries, US definitely, and maybe also some parts of Asia, that nobody wants to be a farmer. Very simple. You want to be an MBA, working for Nestle's of this world, maybe, yeah, or for other companies, but you don't want to be a farmer. Wake up early in the morning, have zero vacation, always work, unfair prices, always hard, being dependent on climate, which gets more erratic. Nobody wants to do that. So therefore, I'm so proud and I'm so active in also talking to young talent to bring them back to farming, as I myself have decided not to be a farmer. I myself decided to spend my life in a warm office and not like my cousin on this farm with all the difficulties that practical farming brings with it. But if there are no farmers left in the world, we don't have to talk about agricultural sustainability. Very simple. That's maybe by far the biggest threat, but it's not the only one. But just as a personal motivation to start into the discussion. So I want to talk about briefly about 3 topics. Maybe I skip one because of time reasons. I first of all want to give you like a little prologue, like a little introduction in the way of discussion that, especially from a European Western perspective, we think agricultural sustainability is in now or should be. Yeah. Then I would love to talk a little, and there's something I might skip because it's a bit more technical. I want to talk a bit about how can we judge and assess what agricultural sustainability really means. What is it? How can we measure it? And last but not least, I'm talking a little bit about implementation. It's possible. Indeed, it's possible. And I want to share some insights, superficial insights into how this could work out. I promise that I finish, let's say, 35 or so, let's say 4:35, so that there's sufficient time for discussion. But again, if you have a question in between, if I speak too fast, if I use words, terms you're not familiar with, just interrupt me such that we can make the best of the time, right? All right. So let's move into the first topic, giving you a bit of a background, right? This is where I always start from. 15,000 years ago, farming was invented. And it's of course, it has been very important to mankind, as we would be much less people on this planet. And we wouldn't be like eight on the way to 9 billion, but we would be by far less than 1 billion if we would still be hunters and gatherers. Farming has been shaping mankind for a couple of years. When it was invented 14,000 years ago in the area between, where is it like today? Iraq, Turkey, Syria, Jordania, and Jordan, yeah? And then it became a very successful concept which spread all over the different parts of this world. And we shouldn't forget about the, let's say, perceived dominance by Western Europe over the last couple of 100 years before the Far East got more important globally, and was driven by agriculture. We had just luck because we were in parts of the world where agriculture was, especially crop production, was easier. And if crop production is easier, then also labor division gets easier because unlike hunting and gathering, crop production is something you can plan for. Yeah, the oldest, let's say, any kind of pots also, the oldest remains that we have from archaeology are like 6,000 years old. Prior to that, people were not used to store and stockpile food because it was perishing. Yeah. So from that on, 6,000 years ago, people started to also create stocks of food, store harvested products. And that was the basis for a division of labor in the societies. There would be no universities, there would be no software companies, there would be no automotive companies if there would not be labor division. And this labor division started from the sheer fact that we could do farming, crop production, very simple. And that was the luck of Europe, if you will, starting 3,000 years, or let's say 1,000 years ago, before Christ ago. That was that we had just good climatic conditions. That might be the reason why, for example, the British Empire was possible. And it was not like let's say, the Indonesian Empire, it was the English Empire, because we were just lucky. Crop production was easy. That's the way how agriculture shapes how human societies are organized. And you might be familiar with this story. I want to appear the Great Famine in Ireland, and the three, let's say, misharvests between 1845 and 1849, which is, let's say, also the birth hour of the United States, as you might be familiar with the sheer fact that in the United States of America, more Irish people are living than in Ireland. That's due to the fact that 150 years ago, 170 years ago, actually, because of misharvests in potato, the most important staple crop in Ireland, the population of Ireland, which is the green curve, so it's Ireland, it's German, yeah, compared to continental Europe, which is the blue curve, was nearly cut in half. You can see from 8 million went down to 4 million. 2 million Irish are missing. What happened? One of them died by starvation 170 years ago. They just died away. They passed away. These are the guys here. It's, by the way, a cartoon from the Irish Times, the most important Irish newspaper from 1847. And another million sailed with the ships to the United States. It became one of the biggest populations of immigrants into the United States. The big holiday, public holiday in Ireland is the St. Patrick's Day. And the St. Patrick's Day, if it's celebrated in New York, attracts more than 1 million people. In Dublin, it's much less. So it was pretty much one fungal disease, which completely shaped the way how the, let's say, world history was made, and why one factor why the United States became so important, because of immigration due to a miss. And then just pretty much 15 years ago, the so-called Arab Spring, yeah, the revolutions in a lot of Arabian countries like Jordan, Tunisia, Libya, Syria, where still civil wars ongoing, Algeria, Egypt, when autocratic systems were removed. This started off as a hunger movement because bread prices were skyrocketing over the 2 years 2009 into 2011, which a lot of the population, as you can see here, protested against. And after protesting against bread prices, it turned out to be a general protest against autocratic systems in those countries. And a lot of them, as you might know, have been then removed and turned into something else, maybe not always very democratic. But there's this Arab Spring started off as a revolt, a revolution in different countries, 8 different countries, because of hiking bread prices. What happened? Well, if you just look into the economic figures, as here compiled by the Institute for American Studies, you can see here that those countries which per capita import most wheat, you have Libya, you have Jordan, Algeria, Tunisia, Yemen, Egypt. So those countries, the Arab countries, are the ones with the United Arab Emirates, which of course are very wealthy, and Israel, also pretty wealthy, are most dependent per capita on the import of wheat. The percentage of the income spent for food in those countries is pretty high. Look, for example, Libya, 37.2%, Jordan, 40%, Algeria, 43%, Egypt, 39%, Yemen, 45%. So nearly every other dollar that you have, you spend for food. Compared to Germany, for example, in our country, it's a bit less than 10%. Or see here, Emirates, 8.7%. They or we can afford hikes in bread prices. They can't. And then last but not least, what you need for a revolution is a young population which has nothing to lose. And this is what you can see here. The percentage of the society, of the population being younger than 25 years or low is pretty high in those countries. 47% in Libya, 55% in Jordan, 47.5% in Yemen, 65.5%. Young people having nothing to lose, suffering from a lack of opportunities is a very good mixture of this. What happened actually? Why were there the hikes in bread prices? Because of climate change. Actually, a climate change which in the big wheat producing regions of China, like in the Henan region, Shanxi, Hebei, led to a big drought, which resulted in just sharp decline in wheat production, which then ended up the hikes of wheat prices in the world market. And those countries most dependent on wheat imports suffered the most. Very simple. And this is what we can observe here. So what you can see is, and again, I want to remind you, it might be clear for you, well, farming shapes the way how our society ticks and how it works. Yeah. The interesting thing is that despite the importance of farming, it's a job that very few people want to do. I'm always happy when I talk to young students, age 18, 19, and they tell me, oh, I want to become a farmer. So that's great. That's fantastic. I've decided the other way, and sometimes I regret that. And we need you. We need you, definitely. But it's not only farming itself. Farming has become a very critical business, as farming is beneficial, shapes societies. On the other hand, of course, produces a lot of burden. Burden for the society, burden in terms of, for example, environmental problems, which are the focus of agricultural policies in Europe. It's a lot about how to avoid emissions, how to save on energy, but how to also reduce the impact on soil, how to reduce crop protection, water use, land use. Land is a very scarce resource in most of the countries, also Indonesia, I heard. Yeah. But of course, there's also about a lively, a good and healthy livelihood for farmers, such that it's an attractive business. Yeah? It's very complex. And of course, it should address those topics you are familiar with, and you might be much more than I do, about the context of population growth, urbanization, a lot of people living in mega cities, big agglomerations where you hardly can do any agriculture. It's about closing nitrogen loops, and closing the phosphorus cycle becomes much more critical. Yeah, the middle class is growing, and of course there's also in diets not only meat consumption, but also fresh produce, vegetables and fruits. This is also growing up, and the demand is growing up. Well, and we have to keep up with that. On the other hand, we have increasing resource scarcity and irregularities in crop production. The FAO, for example, did an estimation that the country of Mali in Africa will have only roughly 50 harvests left. Then the soil will be degraded. 50 harvests, ladies and gentlemen. Most of you in the room will still face a situation, I'm too old maybe, but you definitely will face a situation in which then, according to this estimation, there will be no agriculture left in those countries. With an increasing population, also in Africa, this becomes a very, very critical topic. So we have big, big, big problems, ladies and gentlemen. Big problems, but less farmers who want to do. I want to do a little exercise with you, and I hope that it really works. I would love to have one or two volunteers who are close to a microphone, because not all of you are in farming. I would love you to become a farmer for a second. It's a 5 minutes exercise. I prepared a little online game for you. And in this online game, you can, for the first time in your personal history, maybe, manage a farm in the most sustainable way. And managing in a sustainable way means to find the best compromise between economics and the environment. So we're not talking social factors of farming here, but economics or the environment. Let me check whether this works. Otherwise, we just skip it. Can you see my screen still? That work?
Yes, we can see
Okay.
your screen, but it's still
Okay.
on PowerPoint.
Okay. Wonderful. So here's your farm. We are going to manage together now. You can see we have in total 6 fields. Field 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 fields. Forget about the cows. They also look a bit like blown up, but this is maybe just a problem with converting the graphics. Yeah. What is important here? There's a little river next to two of your fields. So I want to remind you that a river is a very vulnerable ecological element. Yeah. So this is the farm, and what I would love to do with you now is to manage this farm in a sustainable way. And that means I have particular options of crops I can grow on this field. For example, you can see here, I can grow, for example, wheat. Oilseed rape is something you're not so familiar with. It's an oil crop. Corn or maize, what you call it. We can leave it fallow, like bare soil and doing nothing. We can grow beans, legumes, which you might know don't need fertilization. So they're very environment friendly, produce proteins for animals or for you. Or we can do just a flowering, like a meadow with a lot of flowering, because that's something which is ecologically good, attracts pollinators, and is also subsidized in the UK. Then we can choose between 3 levels of cultivation intensity. Means how much pressure we want to put on the field in order to gain harvest from that. Yeah. Should we do a lot or a little bit or just very limited? And last not least, what we can do is we can do some measures, 2 measures actually, which is, I made it simple, to do a buffer strip to a water body, which means, for example, here I just grow a bit like grass or so, such that I reduce the risk of spilling crop protection product or fertilizer into the water body and then producing eutrophication. Yeah. So these are the options that we have, and please be brave. And let's see how far we get. We have 1 year of cultivation now. And I'm not doing this alone, but I want you to have your feedback. Maybe also if it's easier, I don't know, Ms. Nazia, if you're in the room or so, if somebody can tell you how this could work. Let's just figure it out. If it doesn't work, we skip it. Yeah. But let's start with the first field. If I want to make a lot of money, I grow wheat, corn, or oilseed rape. If I want to do less money, I produce beans. If I want to make no money but just get subsidies by European Union, I do fallow land or flowering. So field number 1 is good soil. What shall we do here? What shall we grow? Any thought? Shoot it from your hips.
Hey, excuse me, Professor Markus. We still see your PowerPoint, not the game.
I see, I see.
Yeah.
All right. Let me see how we can do this. I'm sorry for that.
Yeah,
Better
we
now?
can. Yeah, right.
Yeah, you
Thank
can see it
you.
right now? Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
we
just a
can.
little game. Yeah, it's just a little game. So here you can see this is the setup. Field 1, field 2, field 3, 4, 5, 6. You can see also hectares. It's like 1 hectare is like 2.5 soccer fields. But just for those who are not so much familiar with that. But that's not important. But if you see like this field is small, it's indeed small. If this field like has a very unique shape, indeed it has a very unique shape. And this blue thing here is a river. For the cows are not important, the trees are not important. It's just about managing those farms. Again, the cropping options: wheat, corn, and rape. They make money. Beans make very little money. Fallow means bare soil, doing nothing, or flowering areas um, don't make money at all, of course, because you don't produce anything, but you get very little subsidies by the European. Cultivation intensity high means a lot of fertilizer, a lot of pesticides, a lot of machinery to squeeze out as much harvest as possible. Medium, low means more like organic farming. I don't do a lot of impact input on the field in order to gain my produce. Yeah. Let's say the goal is to run this little farm in the most sustainable way. Means economics, money, and environmental have the same weight of same importance. Let's just do this like a little game. Yeah, and we discuss it later. Why we turned into this. What shall we do in field number 1? Just a short, just shoot from here. We have good
Hello.
soil. So good soil has a good potential to produce something. Any
Hello.
thoughts? Yeah, please,
May I
feel free.
volunteer?
Yeah, absolutely.
Hello. For the good soil beside the river, I think we
Hmm.
could do corn since it requires a lot of nutrients, so it's good for.
Excellent. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So means cultivation intensity high.
Yes.
Good.
And
Should we
a
do a buffer
barrier.
strip or not?
Yes, a barrier. Yeah,
Good.
the easement. Yeah.
Okay. Hmm. Let's go to field number 3. It's weak soil, close to the farm infrastructure, and very small. What should we do there?
Should I answer or someone
Yes,
else?
please. Yes, no, let's do it. Let's do it together.
Okay.
It's not a
I'll
simple.
do on this land, I'll do wheat
You do wheat here. Okay. Mm-hmm.
with
It's
it's the middle one. For that,
medium.
I'll do
As all right. Okay. So it one did make easier to right here. Like wheat would be
okay.
good. Wheat and intensity medium.
Yeah, medium. Oh no,
Exactly.
no. Wait, what's happening?
I can. Yeah.
For the for
This
the
is my
bad
number
for
3.
the medium soil,
This is medium soil. Yeah.
the medium soil, I'll do field beans.
Pea beans. Good.
Yeah,
Yeah.
to restore the nitrogen for the next season.
Wonderful. Wonderful.
And
Obviously, you are trained in agriculture. Wonderful.
and I
Do
won't do
it.
a buffer strip for this one.
Okay. We lose a bit of area, but we reduce the pressure on the water body, right? Thanks a lot. Okay. Then weak soil, a very small field, 4 hectares. Not a
Uh,
good location. What do we do?
I'll do also field beans with low intensity cultivation.
Thanks very much. Here, of course, we
Yeah.
can do any buffer strip. Number 4, good soil, big field.
For
No
the
water body next to it.
I'll do wheat,
Mm-hmm. Intensity,
medium.
done.
Okay. And
Then we have,
uh for the
yeah,
bad soil, I'll do a flowered area.
this one here.
Yeah, I'll do the
Maybe I'll do beans too.
Beans.
Yeah,
You love
with low
beans. That's
intensity.
good.
Yeah, I like
Very
beans.
healthy, by the way. Yeah. Low intensity. Good.
Yes, yes,
Done.
low intensity.
And then we have this little one here. This
A
little
flowered
like
area
flower area. Why
for the
that?
pollinators.
Oh, wonderful. That's great. Okay. So are we done already? So let's see for a moment. Is there already a banner showing up? No. Then there's one information still missing, which is weird. Here we go. It says here like, and I couldn't see it on my screen. So let's go to the results. Yeah. Now a little calculation is done, which will check about your environmental performance as well as the economic performance. They get the same weight. And it's interesting. It doesn't show up the results, but which is weird because which is a little bit weird.
Yeah, my friend pointed out that we might have missed the intensity of the flowered area. That's why it's not loading.
No. You were totally right. It's just a data prop, but doesn't matter at all. Doesn't matter at all. I explain it to you right now. No. When it comes to the to flowering areas, let's see. This is always like if you present around the world. Just give me a second. So last season, no, it for whatever reason it doesn't show results. But I go back to this in a second. So I lead you through this right now. So let's restart. So here we had the corn, we had high intensity, and we had the flowering strip. It was here we had I think it was field beans, low intensity. Here we had winter wheat, high intensity. Here we had field beans, low intensity. Here was a flowering area, and this was I think winter wheat.
Beans as well,
Oh,
beans.
beans. Yeah. It was so deep in beans with the
With
with
low
the buffer
intensity.
strip, low
Low.
intensity. Okay,
Yep.
excellent. I will not press the calculation button, but obviously it seems like it's not working at the moment for whatever reason. But what you've done here is quite nice because you kind of estimated first of all where do I have in my particular situation the highest potential to create a benefit. And if I do the extreme, if I have a good soil here, a big field, where I can produce also with a high intensity, with limited, I mean, not zero, but limited environmental pressure, I should focus here on making money. The other extreme is maybe an area like this one, where you said because of the geometry of the field, it's not easy to manage it with different machinery. So before trying to make money with that, it's much better just to see how can I use this marginal area to improve the environmental performance of my agricultural practice. This is exactly what you've done. So your score, I cannot show it to you for whatever reason, but your score would be very high. Yeah. Then what you've done here is you produce corn because you have good soil, you make money with that, but you at least use the buffer strip option, which means you lose some area. Yeah, so you lose some economic advantage, but you want to lower the environmental burden because you're next to the river. And here again, you put the beans here, low intensity on weak soil. It's clear it doesn't have any potential. It would be the same, by the way, if you would do, for example, fallow land. Oh no, that is projects. That was beans. But if you go like here, you would see the same result if you would do like flowering or fallow land. That comes the same conclusion. And with those fields here, which are like medium, you sort of corn, right? So you have to balance somehow. What is the best impact? Is it better just to produce a bit more and also accepting a bit more environmental burden, or the other way around? And here nobody can help you. That depends upon your personal view on how you best use the land. Yeah, but doing less can mean you can produce more. And I want to show you a bit later how this could play out in Europe. Unfortunately, we are getting paid. Farmers are getting paid at least some compensation for doing those environmental measures like fallow land or like flowering areas, or also for buffer zones, stuff like that. And last but not least, for reducing intensity, because they believe we produce sufficient amounts, and we want to make sure that the environmental burden of agriculture is as little as possible. That's pretty much the focus area of where we stand today in our agricultural policies. So unfortunately, it didn't work out nicely. So I know later, but just as that you can see a little bit. Sustainable agriculture is about trade-offs. Is one important word you should take home from this little session with me is trade-offs. Or Americans say, there's no free lunch. If you want to produce more and you want to be economically successful, you have to accept, to some extent, environmental burden. And if you want to focus pretty much on the environmental health of your landscape, you have to accept also some economic drawbacks. Typically, you cannot have everything at the same time. Yeah. On a global perspective, reducing weeds is not an option. Here's a projection by the University of Minnesota in St. Paul, by the group of Jonathan Foley, who did a lot of modeling, looking a bit into the future. And what it nicely tells you from a global perspective, what we do in the moment in Europe by incentivizing farmers to produce less is not an option, right? Here, the years 2010 and 2020, where the projection has been done. And what you can see here, if you just follow the trends that we are facing at the moment and accept like maybe moderate growth of the yields globally for the biggest staples like maize, rice, wheat, and soybean, that we cannot keep up with the dotted lines per crop. The dotted lines is what we need to produce if we just follow the logical population growth. If we want to feed 9.6 billion people with 2,000 calories per day, the full lines are not sufficient, but we need dotted lines. And we have no clear concept, to be frank, how we want to get there. We have to accept this, right? We don't know yet. We don't know yet how we do this best, and I come to this a bit later. So today's protection levels are not sufficient. And when we now think about what should we do, we want to achieve more sustainable development goals at the same time, you hear a lot of concepts, clear concepts, like people say intensify production. They believe it's intensification. End of story. Others say consolidation of farms, as farm sizes are typically very small. And not only in Indonesia, but also in China, and also in Europe, by the way. Also, the average German farm is not bigger than 30 hectares. Use GMO, some people say. Yeah, genetic modification. That's our recipe. Others say you have to do organic farming. That's the way. Avoid food waste. I think you had some discussion about food waste also in your summer course. Yeah, some people believe we just have to save on food waste, and that's it. 30 to 40 to 50% of the food are spilled somewhere in the value chains. Yeah, from the farm down to your breakfast table. So if you avoid food waste, we are in good shape. We should only consume regionally. We should become vegetarian or even vegan. Yeah, you hear a lot of those statements saying, "I have the solution. I know how we do it. Sustainably feeding 9.6 billion people, no problem. You just need to do this or that or that." Personally, I don't believe in that. I don't believe it that simple. Especially if you think about how can we achieve different targets about which we talk here. Sustainability goal number 2, no hunger. At the same time, for example, with good health. Also, gender equality is an agricultural topic. Yeah. And then, of course, life below water, life on land. You want to produce like that. It's not that simple. Yeah. In Europe, typically, organic farming is seen as a surrogate for sustainable agriculture. I want to show you in a second that it's not that easy without boring you with the details. Organic farming is here analyzed in a meta study with respect to different environmental categories, not economic, but just environmental categories, like global warming potential, which means avoiding climate change or fighting climate change, avoiding over-fertilization, we call it beautification, or avoiding the acidification of oceans, leading, for example, to the bleaching of coral reefs, or just land use efficiency. So how much land do we need to consume for agriculture in order to produce our stuff? Energy consumption. And ecotox. Ecotox means bringing out chemicals into the environment, which might have burden. And here you see the different products: milk, beef, pork, chicken, eggs, grains, veggies, fruits. And these three different colors. Red means in their studies analyzed organic production, conventional production performed better, environmentally better than organic production. Green means organic production performed environmentally better than conventional production, and no difference was seen in the yellow ones. And what you can see on the first glimpse, it's not that easy. It's a very colorful picture. You don't see just green, organic production is environmentally better. You don't see just red, conventional production is environmentally better. But you see a lot of mix. So obviously, you need to have a closer insight into what it really means and what sort of product I have in mind. So what you can see here, for example, if you think of milk production and then the global and then the climate change potential, it's not clear whether you should grow or produce the milk organically or conventionally. And the number here, 32, means 32 studies have been analyzed, not showing a clear preference for one or the other system. When it comes to chicken, for example, obviously, chicken meat can be environmentally, or let's say from a climate change perspective, produced with less climate gas emissions if it's grown organic and conventionally. So interestingly, what you see here, in total, there's no green this column, which means organic farming has not turned out to be better with respect to avoiding climate change in one or the other product. When it comes to avoiding ecotox, which means environmentally unfriendly chemicals being brought into the ecosystem, you see most or less everything is green, which means organic farming is better. And that's not a surprise, because here organic farming does not accept chemical synthetic pesticides and also mineral fertilizers. So they contain heavy metals, and so they are avoided to be brought out. So here, with respect to ecotox, organic farming has a clear advantage. With respect to land use efficiency,
Okay, everyone, I think Professor Markus have some problem in their connection, so we will try to reach him out, and please wait for that. Thank you.
so here I'm back again. I apologize. Obviously, the internet was unstable for the moment, right?
Yeah,
Can you
that's
hear me
okay.
again?
Yeah, we can hear you clearly.
Okay, super. Thanks very much. I apologize for this inconvenience, but this is what can happen around the world, and I can only use a Wi-Fi here. So I come back to this. See my screen? Can you see my screen again?
Yes, we can see that.
Okay, wonderful. So when this comes to land use efficiency, so how much land do I consume to produce the products? You can see it's mainly reddish. As conventional farming leads to higher yields, and higher yields, of course, mean less land to be consumed. So to cut a long story short, what you see here is we don't have the solution in hand. Organic farming is not the solution, as conventional farming obviously is not the solution. How to solve the problems at the same time, to have an economic, attractive agricultural sector where farmers are incentivized economically to do their job, and at the same time to have the solution for our environmental problems, which net are produced also by especially intensive agriculture, which makes it a bit complex. Last not least, we should not forget that our agriculture system is dominated, as yours, by the way, more and more, by multinational companies and trusts who sell food and do this in multinational value chains. And those brands, the big ones, the Unilevers of this world, the Procter & Gamble's, the Nestle's, they have a clear concept of where they don't want to be. As showing this nice cartoons here. They want to protect their brand because the brand value is not bad. Food companies have a pretty good brand value. Unlike, for example, the tobacco industry or like the junk food and fast food industry. And they don't want to be the tobacco industry of tomorrow. They want to protect their global brands. So that means they enforce agricultural sustainability in their value chains. Yeah. So here you can see like a typical value chain, and it's not the farmers here at the beginning producing for example, tomato or whatever, who bring, let's say, sustainability concerns into the debate. Unfortunately not, ladies and gentlemen. Unfortunately not. It's pretty much the big food companies and the big retail companies, and some of them like the Walmart and the Carrefour and those other. They are Tesco, they're global brands. Retailers with global brand value. And of course, all the food companies you're familiar with, taking one more region, one which is Costco from China, yeah, but they have a global brand, global brand, and they are afraid that consumers, especially Western consumers, are concerned about sustainability, and because they want to avoid that, they expect that for consumers it's a value driver, and that means they enforce the entire value chain agricultural practices. I worked a lot in my former life with suppliers of, let's say, Unilever, of Costco and Nestle. And what the big food companies do is they tell them, well, if you want to sell to me, these are the different recipes you have to. One of the big programs I'm doing active research at the moment is to work with dairy farms in Germany, producing for Nestle. And Nestle says, well, we want to reduce our company carbon footprint by 50%. We realized that the biggest CO2 factor in our organization is milk. It's the ingredient milk, because we have a lot of milk products, milk-based products. And the impact of milk production is much higher than, for example, of, let's say, energy in the factories or whatever. Yeah. So the big one for them is milk. And they say, look, they go to dairy farms and say, if you want to sell to me, you have to reduce your carbon footprint by X%, pretty much 30%. Otherwise, I'm not your customer anymore. So they have to make it possible. It's not equal bargaining power, but it's big companies telling small farmers what they need to do and how they need to adapt. It's not a fair game, but it's a game which is played over and over and over again. And when you think of like the plantation agriculture in Indonesia and the role of certification, for example, and the bigger role of certification to avoid deforestation when it comes to palm production, it's pretty clear that it's driven by those big organizations. They just don't want to have that. and they have the bargaining power to tell farmers how they need to produce in order to be qualified to sell into them. And they are afraid that consumers might pick this up. Say, well, I don't want, let's say, consumer milk, which has a high environmental burden. I want to decide differently. So certification here is really important. And that's a little bit my summary for the first step. This is how consumers tick, especially in the Western world. We need more for less at a much higher quality level, in a sustainable way, of course, to get everyone well fed with a good conscience. Now, these are, in a very provocative way, ladies and gentlemen, the situation we are in when it comes to global agricultural sustainability. We have to achieve a lot of things at the same time. And there are a lot of things we must not do as consumers, maybe, or big companies in particular don't want us to do. And that means a lot of pressure, a lot of adaptation pressure. I skip the second part and go directly to the third part because of time. And that is to share with you one or two examples, case studies, how this can be done. That it's possible to do several things in Germany. And I want to take you to a little journey to the UK. And we are located here 1.5 hours. This is London. And here 1.5 hours north of London, Northampton. And I want you to visit together with me a farm which is managed by two brothers, the brothers William and Andrew Pitts. What you can see is a coverage of an agricultural journal in the United Kingdom by NFU, which means National Farmers Union, United Kingdom. And they call themselves the article about them is called The Influence of Balance, because this is how they see the world. If you ask them, what is your job? Pitts brothers, they say, we are businessmen, Markus, we are businessmen. We are not, they call it tree huggers, like environmentalists, ecological freaks. We are businessmen. Yeah, we have families. We want to feed them well. We want to be sort of rich, yeah, affluent, yeah, no doubt about it. But we accept that we have to share the benefits of agriculture somehow with the environment. And we believe it can be done at the same time. We can do both together, be environmentally friendly and being economic successfully. And this, I want to share with their story with you guys. I worked a lot with them and did a lot of studies on their farm that really helped me to see that what they do is real, right? It's not fake news. It's done that way and it works out quite well. They have a big farm, 800 hectares. It's relatively big, also for UK purposes. A very nice rolling landscape, which you can see here. Good soil, medium heavy soil. And this is a picture taken from a drone. What you can nicely see here already is that within their fields, you see some of the fields. First of all, here you see a lot of small patches. These are flowering elements, different flowers which are growing here. It's in the summertime, so the colors are not that strong here. But here's you don't know these are regional flowering crops. You don't know them, but they use a lot of those flowering elements, which flowers and bloom at different stages in the spring and in the summertime. Yeah. What you can also see is here they use digital farming. They use digital decision support systems. For example, for the tractors, they drive using GPS signals. You can see it here on the tram lines. They're just precise. So they just don't steer the tractor manually through it, but they program the GPS system, and this will guide them through the field so that they avoid, for example, also the pressure on the soil as much as possible. As I said, they're businessmen, but they believe you can do both at the same time, produce in a very economic successfully way, but also to have a good environmental footprint. And here's two figures from their farms. So what you can see here is like a schematic aerial view on the farms. And the letters you can see here, like the S, is always an abbreviation for a territory of an endangered bird species. So there are a couple of bird species which are endangered because they are closely linked to agricultural landscapes. Because we use the landscape so intensely, like having just only wheat fields and some corn fields and rapes fields and bean fields, etc. There's no, let's say, for example, good territory for one of those species to develop. So the numbers of bird species, of those farmland birds, is declining over the last 30 years. The more intensive we use the agricultural landscape, the more the numbers are in decline. But interestingly, what you can see here is comparing 2 years, 2009 and 2015, that the Pitts brothers were able to increase the numbers of bird territories by nearly 50%. Yeah, as I said, here, if you see an S, for example, which means skylark. A skylark means this is a territory for a bird of the species skylark, which is a very iconic bird for agricultural landscapes. Or you see a warbler, which is the bluish one here. But that's not important. It's not important for you to see all the different species here. It's just important to see, comparing 6 years of ecological intensification on the farm, how they could increase the number of endangered birds species on the farm. Not measured by them, ladies and gentlemen, but never managed by and measured by an NGO, the BTO, the British Trust of Ornithology. So independent researchers coming to the farm and doing the research and showing indeed that how the bird numbers have increased. How have they achieved that? It's a mixture of different things, which pretty much falls on the paradigm of what we call conservation agriculture. And conservation agriculture means you produce in an intensive way. They use fertilizers, mineral fertilizers. They use chemical crop protection products, pesticides, no problem with them. They use a lot of machinery. But for example, they try to leave the soil as undisturbed as possible. They do what agriculturists call direct seeding. So not a deep plow where you turn around the soil over and over again, which typically leads to a loss of fertility of the soil. But they try to leave it pretty much untouched. They aspire to widen the crop rotation as much as possible. Yeah, those annual crops are not grown one year after the other in monoculture, wheat after wheat after wheat after wheat. But they when they have grown a wheat, next year they grow a bean, for example. Then they grow a corn or whatever. And those crop rotations, they are widened as much as possible, which again leads to a gain in the fertility of the soil. And fertility of the soil is always the starting point, the basis for fertility in the agricultural landscape. And they try to avoid bare soil, but they want to have so-called cover crops or intercrops, like growing something on bare soil over the entire year. Yeah, unlike in Indonesia, of course, half of the year, soil in Europe is bare soil. There's grown nothing. And they avoid the bare soil by growing other crops like cover crops, intercrops, not for selling them to the marketplace, but to use them, for example, to catch all the nutrients around, avoid nutrient leaching, and also just keep the fertility in the soil and not going letting go down the drain, losing fertility. And last not least, here you can see them, by the way, harvesting at the moment. At the moment, we have harvest time for wheat, for example, in the UK. But what they also use is digital tools to help them. For example, what you see here is a satellite map from one of the fields. That's one of the fields. Yep. And this picture has been taken by a satellite, the so-called Sentinel-B program for European Union. The satellite uses a particular optical system which tells which is able to assess the biomass on the field, which means if you have like a blue color here, That means this area has a strong crop development, a big biomass, chlorophyll. Whereas the reddish areas, they show a very weak growth crop. So the reddish, yellowish areas, they have very limited growth. The blue ones have a very strong growth. Which means, if you think about that the blue ones are the interesting ones because they, at the end, produce the main harvest, the main yield. The yellowish to reddish ones, they are less of important because they have become with very limited yield. Here, something is just the blue ones are pretty much close to 10 tons per hectare, metric tons. The reddish ones are close to 1 ton, 1/10 of the. And unfortunately, you can see the reddish ones are the ones which produce, when you work on them, higher specific costs, as the geometry is very complex, so that it's difficult with machinery to navigate through them. So the relative costs for those areas. So what the Pitts brothers do now is to say, we don't intend to produce from the entire field, but we take out the reddish areas out of the production and do flowering strips here, for example, or cover crops and other stuff, ecological measures. And we just produce on the remainder of the field, which is these areas, taking out all the reddish ones, so just the middle blue. They produce lower costs, they have lower production costs, as they are easier to work through with big machinery. So they produce only 80% of the field. Take out 20% from the production. And what does it mean? Of course, they produce less. They lose on yield, but they gain profitability, ladies and gentlemen. This is the scenario if they produce their wheat on 100% of the field, taking also the reddish areas into account. And what it means is that the costs to produce a ton go up or are at the range of 1,600 British pounds sterling per ton. And the profitability of the field is pretty much 800 pounds per field. If they produce less, they reduce volume, tonnage. But because the specific costs for the last 20% are so high, they reduce the costs per ton down to 900 and increase the profitability of the field to 1,300, ladies and gentlemen. By producing less, they increase profitability. They lower the environmental burden and make more money with less hassle. Well, this is the way how we do agriculture. This is the way how we should do this. What do they do now on this 20% taking out of the production? For example, we talked about this before in the game. They do like flowering strips, which attract insects. Insects are eaten up by birds. Birds then also are eaten by other like mammals or so in the food web. So biodiversity is increased in those areas. So the Pitts brothers do 1.5 hectare of like nectar and pollen sources, flowering strips of 100 hectares. Or they grow winter feed for seed-eating birds in the winter time when nothing's on this 20% they leave out. Also, they do like those shelter belts to reduce because of the wind on erosion and produce more habitats for other animals to be attracted and wildlife to develop. Again, 20% land is won, and now they can do environmental stuff. That's what they do. They do other stuff like here in Netscapes. This is what we call skylark plots. This is for the bird of skylark to land and start again. Those stone piles are very important to attract like particular reptilia, so particular animals. Then you manage water ditches and ponds that you have on the feet, and so on and so on and so on. I don't want to bore you with the details, but showing you by producing less, you can make more money, and you can improve your environment. And this is the way how we should think about agriculture. What they also can do, because they do a lot of work around soil fertility, theoretically, they can produce carbon credits from the soil. And carbon credits can be sold then to manufacturing industries at some stage, maybe, which, for example, burn fossil fuels and need to, in under European law, buy carbon credits from forestry and maybe in the future also from agriculture. At the moment, there's no official trading of carbon credits from agriculture in Europe. But if this might change next year, and then the Bits brothers, because they do a lot of work on humus productions, I mean soil fertility, they would be well equipped, maybe also to produce and sell carbon credits to the marketplace, to another source of income, which other farmers who don't look after the soil fertility could not participate. That might be the future, but it might be a future business. And this shows to me also that we need to think about when it talks about the future farm, of those digital tools and digitization, how it also this can help us to run farms in the future more sustainably. Yeah? How the future of agriculture, of arable cropping, for example, will be, we don't know yet. Yeah, we participate in a lot of programs when it comes to using robots, for example, a fleet of agribots doing a lot of production work, interventions in the field. We see, for example, that in animal husbandry, a lot of tools are used, for example, to measure, for example, environmental welfare, animal welfare, and in this and health problems, those kind of things. We use survey drones to see, do we have particular infections, for example, with the fungus going on in some parts of the field which we don't see. A lot of this has been done. Of course, we steer our fleets of tractors with GPS signals. They're not driven manually by most of the farmers anymore. So digital tools, digital decision support plays a more and more important role when it comes to agriculture. And farmers get more into data management, as been shown maybe here in this provocative scheme. Maybe in the future, we will not talk about one field, but one just parts of the field growing one crop, other parts of the field growing another crop, like schematically shown in this picture on the right, where the yellow button, for example, should indicate this oilseed rape is grown, blue should be like barley, and C would be wheat, for example. If we can really understand from digital tools and satellite information all the peculiarities of just little spots on the field, we might even, break down different fields into one small parts and work on them in a more efficient way. And we should not forget about that food is about a real food system. And also consumers play a role here. But as I saw already that in other talks that it has been also discussed. Sustainable food systems means high resource efficiency, participation of people at different stages, especially the consumers, community control to some extent, short, sometimes local value chains, but also globalized value chains, of course. A direct contact between producer and consumer, and orientation on particular values. And European consumers, not all of them, but a lot of them who can also afford it, they are keen of a more environmental friendly production. And they raise their voice. And green parties are very important in the European parliaments in different stages, because they articulate those needs of the consumer to have a more environment friendly agriculture. We know some of the recipes how to get there. And the story about the Pitts brothers, the role of ecological intensification and digitization might be very important levers to be pursued in the future together. So with that, I want to just give me 2 minutes and then I'm done. I want to tell you how we can save the world. Yeah, I know the big secret. But it's not my wisdom. It's done by a meta study, a modeling study by University of Minnesota. There's the question, okay, ladies and gentlemen, what do we now need to survive as mankind? And they looked into different scenarios, how we could achieve the to feed 9.6 billion people at the end. And the scenarios where we just pursue current yield trends, as I saw in the prediction before. So they will moderately go up, but that's it. Or we close the yield gaps, especially by sustainable intensification in those countries of the world where there's still like a big gap, like Southeast Asia and especially Africa. We reduce 50% food loss and waste, and we reduce meat consumption. As you might have heard also in the food talks in your summer course, meat, of course, means a lot of resources. Yeah. And now they asked in different scenarios, what would it be sufficient to feed mankind without producing more, consuming more land? For example, pristine rainforest in Indonesia. If we just pursue current yield trends, or we produce current yield trends and reduce food loss and waste and reduce the meat consumption. So it's always a combination of different scenarios. Just current year trends, so everything continues as usual, as business as usual, or just reducing food waste, or reducing food waste and becoming more vegetarian, or just closing yield gaps in developing countries, or closing yield gaps and reducing food waste, or the combination of all. And the answer, of course, as you can imagine, is unfortunately we need everything at the same time. This is the scenario. Reducing food waste by 50%, closing the yield gaps, and reducing the meat consumption. Only this in concert, ladies and gentlemen, will bring us into a position that we can produce a sufficient amount of food for 9.6 billion people by minus 12%. We need less crop area, theoretically. We need less grassland. We can increase the average the area of forest by 4%. For example, tropical rainforest, like in Indonesia. We can reduce greenhouse gas by 48%, and at the same time, we need to use more fertilizers to get there. But the Achilles heel of fertilizer, which is climate change potential, would be reduced. So it's possible, but it's not only farmers; it's consumers, it's farmers, it's the entire food system who have to work in general. And that means, and brings me to my last slide then, we see global megatrends. They will impact our food system. I believe that a more sustainable production is possible. We need both. We need agricultural intensification and digitization. They might be key enablers. And last not least, it's our all challenge. It's not only the farmers who can do the job, but it's our supply and demand making this change happen. And it can be done, and it has to be done. Otherwise, we will feel like those little dinosaurs after the ark has left and the deluge starts. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you so much, Professor Markus, for your interesting presentation about sustainable agriculture, light at the end of the tunnel. And before we go to the question and answer session, I would like to say hello to our faculty member who are very excited to join Professor Markus' session, which are Dr. Wahyu Supartono and also Mr. Anggoro Cahyo Soekartiko. Okay,
Thanks so much.
so to all the participants who want to ask the question, you can talk directly to the microphone in front of you, or for the online participant, you can directly turn on your microphone. So, okay, any question for the on-site participant?
Yes.
Okay, yes. What?
My name is Abu Huraira and I'm from Pakistan. First of all, I would like to thank Doctor for a very nice presentation with stats and
Thanks.
all. And secondly, I want to ask about the question that the thing that that was mentioned, how to save the world, and use of GMOs was also mentioned over there. And I want to make sure one thing about GMOs, like, okay, genetically modified organisms, how do we make sure that they are all right for us, and what are gonna be the side effects of the GMOs? Later on, I'm afraid that we would put humanity into a new problem. Like with the use of GMOs, maybe a new problem arise which we don't know yet. So how will we cope with that?
That's a good question. To be quite frank, I have, and this is a very personal view. As you might know, that a majority of European consumers um, uh, are really scared when it comes to GMOs, and they don't accept GMOs. So we don't have GMO technology into our European market. Even soybean as an ingredient for animal production is more and more non-GMO. Um, I have spent a couple of years of my life in working in GMO technology, and there are two things which occur to me. Very personal view. First of all, I'm not aware of any negative side effect yet by GMO, which are not, let's say, typical for, let's say, big farming operations. So some things mentioned are big farms, corporate farms, and a lot of environmental pressure and so on and so forth. That's true. Yeah. But the Brazilian farms we talk about, or the Midwestern farms in the United States, are that as well as the way structured anyway. That's not thanks to GMO, but GMO is one of the tools they're using. Yeah, but I'm not aware, to be quite frank, although GM technology was started in 1996, of any, let's say, clear side effect, negative side effect associated to GM. The other aspect I'm familiar with, which always comes up when we talk GMO, is that GMO technology is much overrated by a lot of those actors because they believe it's like the silver bullet, right? If you have a werewolf, you shoot the werewolf with the silver bullet or the vampire, and then it dies. Yeah. So this GMO will solve all of our problems. I don't believe in that because some technologies, GMO technologies we are using, are very useful, but they are very dedicated to one particular problem. And we have so many different problems in general. So for me, indeed, they can be part of the solution. And I also personally believe as a European, we should allow for more technologies, which you could summarize under modern breeding. And especially those genome editing, CRISPR-Cas stuff, which is done now. I mean, there's zero harm coming from that. I would definitely opt for that. But at the same time, I don't believe it will solve everything because we have to change the entire food system, starting the way how we think about ecology, starting the way how farmers operate, starting the tools that we use. And we need a broad mix of different tools. And in our toolbox, I would love to see more GMO. With not disputing that, of course, we have to look into potential negative side effects. I expect them mainly on the social side to be. Yeah. But it's a very personal view. I'm not, to be making clear cut, I'm not aware of any clearly reported, scientifically validated negative side effect of at least those GMO technologies which we are using today in the global markets. Hope this
Okay.
answers the question. So,
Okay, I see there. But like, what about then the nutrition value? Like, you also mentioned that we should go be vegetarian, and okay, and not to forget about the lab grown meat or like plant-based protein and all. They have the different nutrition values from like traditional way of consumption of food and meat.
yeah,
But and also, how do we make sure they are free from contaminations of maybe microplastics or other maybe metals? Who knows? Like, so how do we make sure? Because it's a
good point.
serious health concern. Actually, that's why
Yeah.
I'm asking these questions.
Yeah, good question. And to be quite honest, I cannot address the last one because this is not my expertise. Yeah, with microplastics and food quality, food safety, you might have more experienced food engineers also at UGM also who can help better. Yeah. With respect to the first one, I'm not opting for a situation that we all should become vegetarian, because we have at something like 30% in total of the area of the agricultural area in Europe is grassland, and this is marginal land, which we cannot use in a different way than just producing grass. So we need a very efficient converter or extractor of protein from grass. And grass is pretty much um, the least attractive source of proteins in the entire biosphere. And those converters are called animals, especially ruminants. I'm definitely opting to have animal production, definitely, because on 30% of the land, we have no better use of the land than to produce meat, but not more. That's my mantra. Not more. What we should not do, or we must not do in the future, is to grow corn, for example, in a very intensive way, as we do today in Brazil or United States of America in the Midwest, to produce cattle. And by doing so, lose a lot of calories in this inefficient process. Eight ninths of the calories are lost. And they produce a lot of CO2 emissions. That's something we cannot afford. So, I mean, we shouldn't become vegetarian, but we should confine animal production to those areas which are marginal that we cannot produce other crops. This is just my preference.
I got your point, and that's well answered. So the reason, like, it's a bit hard to completely trust this approach because I'm not sure, like, 100% that using these approaches, we would not be opening the doors to new problems for the humanities or health crisis. Because if we abandon the problems right now and choose the alternative ways, so that's my main concern related to this. So personally, what do you think? Using these approaches are gonna be safe for the futures, or are there any possible threats that we might face?
The good news is, according to my limited experience, again, I'm an agriculturalist, I'm not a food scientist, yeah, but based on the studies that I've seen, the good news is that a more vegetarian diet is much more healthy. So and I think that we have bona fide evidence from different parts of the world that this is the case. And there are also studies being able to clearly link longevity, even in Europe, to the diet. The problem, I think from a public health perspective, I think the big issue we have is that meat is overconsumed, not so much in your region. This might, according to projections, change because I don't know about Indonesia in particular, but in China, for example, meat is still like luxury good. But this is changing as we produce in bigger units and lower the production prices. Yeah, the prices will come down more and more and more. Environmental burden will go up and up and up and up. And so much more meat will be produced and consumed, and that means also more public health issues. Where I see a point, definitely, I'm with you, is education. For example, Europe was devastated by World War II, started by the Germans. Yeah, and in the 1950s and 60s, when the wealth, the affluence grew up, meat became like a conventional good that you can have an every day. A lot of families in Europe consume meat every day, every other day. And obesity, atherosclerosis, those kind of things are big issues. The population, the generation of kids growing up in the United States in particular, to some extent also in some European countries, born now today in 2025, have a shorter life expectancy than the one of their fathers and mothers. That's for the first time in history. And why is that? Because of obesity, because of atherosclerosis, because of meat consumption. Yeah. So I think this is not a problem. I think, as I said, I'm not the expert, but I believe there's scientific evidence on my side saying we will not face a health crisis. But in contrast, we will face, let's say, a big boost in public health if we reduce meat consumption, in particular in those countries where meat is just too cheap. But how to get there? That's a big problem. In Germany, for example, we have a democracy. And if I would start a party and advocate for banning meat, or let's say opting for fair meat prices, which means if all the environmental burden associated to meat production is allocated to the product, it would be pretty much unaffordable for a lot of parts of the population. If that would be my political program, I'm done. Nobody would vote for me. This is a clear recipe of not being successful, although it would tell the environmental truth. So I think education, also, let's say, adaptation of the food sector to a less meat-borne diet is something which will create some hassle. And I'm with you. It will not be done overnight. It's a big one. But I think society and environment would both benefit.
Definitely, you made yourself very clear, and I got your point. Thank you so much for answering my questions.
Pleasure. Thanks so much.
Okay, thank you for your question. And we also have question from the online participant. So, Miss Maria Abigail, you can turn on your microphone and ask your question.
Hello, good morning. Good
Good morning.
morning or good evening there. Um, I am an advocate of sustainable agriculture. I am currently teaching in a university um, about sustainable agriculture, and I this is also promoted under the Sustainable Development Goals by 2030. Sustainable agriculture. But I just want to get your point of view regarding the the organic farming, if it's part of the sustainable agriculture, because there are practices in the sustainable agriculture that are not part of the organic farming. So I just want to hear some views from you, because currently our government is spending a lot of money teaching the farmers to do organic farming, but those money are being wasted because they are not practicing organic farming after the trainings or after education. They all synthetic fertilizer. So I just want to
Mm-hmm.
ask if this organic farming is part of the sustainable agriculture under the Sustainable Development Goals by 2030. Thank you. I'm from the Philippines, by the way.
I thought already, because as I sort of, thanks very much, Maria. I would definitely, I'm a big fan of organic agriculture as one part of the toolbox, as one tool. And for me, it's the Brits say horses for courses, right? The question is, what goal do I want to achieve, and where do I do this in a way? I've done a lot of sustainability assessment work in different parts of the world, also looking deeper into organic systems and conventional systems. I had to see this due to time limitation. And my learning is that organic farming can be more sustainable, and sometimes it's not. And the question is, why is that? Um, for me, the big vision is that conventional farming and organic farming grow closer together. That, well, for example, in our research farm, a lot of the practices of organic agriculture are already practiced by us, as we, for example, try to avoid chemical synthetic pesticides as much as possible. But we don't have nutrients, for example, because there's no animal production around. We get a bit of compost, but that's not sufficient to keep up with the yields. So we need mineral fertilizers. We don't need chemical crop protection. Is it then organic production? No, it's not. Because organic production is pretty much prescriptive. It says you must not use this and you must not use that. But we do parts of that. And my vision is that every farm should see and check which possibilities might exist to do as much, as little mineral fertilization as possible, as little pesticide use as possible, as little machinery use as possible, and see what is, let's say, the best compromise. If I have to, in order to cope with organic certification, reduce my productivity and profitability, then maybe it's not the wise approach. And from a SDG perspective, it's a bad approach. It might be economically attractive for me as a farmer because I can go under certification, get a higher price in the marketplace. It might pay for me. But if, as you do, put this into the umbrella of the SDGs for mankind, it would not be the right. So what I would advocate for is it's just so dependent on the different possibilities and resources on one particular farm. Yeah, there is no farm can be compared to any other farm of this world. So it's about seeing what options do I have to limit my environmental impact as much as possible, to do as much agroecology as possible, to reduce as much mineral fertilizer as possible, to reduce as much pesticides as possible, and to go to this point, but not beyond. And when it works out for me, fine. Go under certification, get a higher price. If it doesn't work out for me, do it anyway, because it's the right way. And the SDGs demand us to go that way. Conventional agriculture has become much more greener, much more environmentally friendly, much more socially sustainable. This is what the SDGs demand us to be. So to start the journey from conventional to organic production is exactly the right way. Where you end then later, under the umbrella of certification or just something in between, that has to be figured out for one farm. Therefore, if your government encourages research in organic farming in particular, I can dispute that this might be a good way to see where is the end, how far can we go, or can different farms go. And I hope and cross fingers that they can go very, very far. But I don't think in systems, right? Organic is better or conventional is better organic. No, I don't believe in that. They should both go together and move together much closer than they are today. That's my personal belief. I hope that answers your question. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Miss Maria Abigail, for your question, and also Professor Markus for your answer. Is it okay, Professor, to give one last question for the participant?
I'm not in a rush. We can do 5 or 10. I'm not in a rush.
Okay, so maybe one last question for the on-site participant. Is it any question? Okay, if you don't have any question, we will end this session. But once again, we would like to say thank you to Professor Markus for your time and most importantly, for your interesting presentation. And it's such an honor for me to be a moderator for your session. And thank you everyone for your participation. And we also have certificate of appreciation for our speaker, Professor Markus Frank. So for the MC and operator, could you help me to show the certificate on the screen?
Well, that was very nice. I can see it. Yeah, very nice.
Okay, thank you, Professor Markus, for your time and also your interesting presentation.
Thank
And
you.
we will also send this certificate to your email also.
Thanks very much. It was a pleasure and an honor for me as well to take part in this very exciting curriculum. I wish you all the best from the different backgrounds, all the best for your professional careers, wherever you end up with. And I hope at least that also I could contribute and take part in inspiring you a little bit for some of the other ideas. If you have if you are interested of having further contact or further discussion, which might occur to you afterwards, you can just easily Google me, and I will definitely come back to you then. Sure. Thanks so much.
Okay, thank you very much, Professor Markus.
All right.
Right.
See you later. Bye bye.
See you later. Bye bye.
Okay, next we will give a certificate also for Taliana Zia MSc MBA, and the certificate will be given symbolized by the committee.
Okay, thank you very much for this opportunity.
With that, the session for today has finished, and we would like to remind all the participants for the post-test and independent study tasks, also for the form of attendance that will be given in the We also want to remind to all of the participants that tomorrow will be the day of presentation about the group project or field trip result that has already been defined. So please prepare your group presentation too. Thank you everyone for all of the participation and attention today. Have a good rest and see you again tomorrow. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.